What's up, guys? Tommy Carrigan with Tommy Untamed. We've got an incredible guest today. Show starts right now. Mr. Stephen Murray, and yeah, you were just saying that attacks are through the roof in security, and I was gonna say, is that indicative of, and there, I mean, it might not even be an or, it could be an and. Is that indicative of just a general rising frequency in the world over the last several years, or could that be written off? Could there be a more benign explanation? Could it just be like as the trend has been for the last 20, 50, 80 years, are we just slowly moving more and more to these hybridized creatures with technology? Not to sound like an old, like the internet, but like, could it just be, of course, like numbers are going to go up as more people move more aspects of their other, like my parents are more tech savvy than they were when I grew up. Like my parents know how to use like Instagram now. It's weird, but like, could it just be that the general like the gross number of people and the percentage of your daily actions are now so much more intertwined with, again, this, I don't know, a cyber world, that attacks are going to go up proportionally? Or could it be that shit's in, we're careening off the rails and it's the end of the world and Skynet?
No, I think the opportunity to create attacks has gotten shorter in duration. So if you go, 10 years ago, anybody that wanted to do a hack would have to do reconnaissance. They'd have to go collect information and profile whoever they were going to go after. Then they'd have to social engineer to figure out if there was a way to get in easily. And if they couldn't do that, then they'd have to figure out how they're going to brute force in or massage their way in or install a payload that would let them in. Now with AI, you could do all that in minutes. I was at an AI conference, I don't know, about 6 months, maybe it's been a year now, geez. Anyway, I'm sitting there with all these CISOs in the room, and we were talking about AI, and the guy next to me was another hospital, he was another healthcare CISO, and we were sitting there with Chat GPT and with OpenAI, and I said, why don't we see if we can get this thing to create a page that would scrape social security numbers? And we said, go out to this website, scrape their color palette, scrape their style palette, build a page that collects name, social security number, address, phone number, etc., and then build an email and go scrape the global address list from Outlook and send this email to everybody and say, hey, we need you to update your social security numbers. We've had some issues with our pay provider and with submitting to the IRS, blah, 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 and make it look like it was a corporate letterhead. 3 minutes. Built the page, scraped the gal, built the letter, and was ready to email it. And I could have fired that off to an entire company in less than 3 minutes. That process would have taken probably 3 months, 5 to 6 years ago. But now with AI, you have the ability to create, like, I don't know if you've seen the Bigfoot memes or the Stormtrooper videos, the vlogs on TikTok and on X, but those are AI generated videos that are created almost every 30 minutes and posted to the internet every 30 minutes, and there's no interaction with humans. So imagine what you can do with cyber warfare if you have that much automation that you can use to create the attack, as well as go profile the code. Because the other thing AI can do is go profile the code on the other end. Because if you go to a website and hit view source on your browser, you can see all the code. It's right there. So you don't need, there's not a lot of social engineering there. You can just go through the code and then see where the SQL injects go. You can see where the cross-site scripting goes. You can see where the cross-site request forgery goes, and you can redirect that page somewhere else, all with AI. You don't have to write any code. And the people I think are going to be most successful with it are going to be the ones that think about, how can I use AI to penetrate a network without having to do any social engineering and reconnaissance that's going to tip over any of the IDSs. Sorry, intrusion detection or intrusion protection systems. And all those systems are already laced throughout throughout the security business, right? And most of the providers like CrowdStrike and some of the others, they're using AI now to filter and look at traffic to see what's coming across. But imagine you have AI that's so sophisticated that it can scan the source code, it can create the profile, create the attack surface, go do the attack, harvest the information you want, and then drop it somewhere where you're never going to be touched or identified. That's what we're seeing. Because I think we've seen over the last 2 years an uptick in attacks, right? And there's also messaging and narrative that go along with that. There's a lot of narrative out there about the big cyber attack, the big doomsday event, right? I think there is a cyber event coming, but I think that's going to be more related to infrastructure and to banks and to communications versus to any of the business entities. The stuff we're seeing right now, at least the stuff I'm seeing, is all criminal elements that are trying to harvest information and some nation state stuff where, and this one's insidious. I don't know why I didn't think about this shit before, but this is insidious. So nation state actors will go apply for a contract position to go into a company and do some coding. And really what they're doing is they're going in to collect intelligence. And they go in, they look legit, they know how to code, speak perfect English. They go in and harvest all of the information that they need. They're gone. And it's been going on for months and months and months. And you don't hear about that because the industrial espionage, that goes on all the time, right? But this is just a new attack surface that was like, why didn't I think of that? What a great idea.
Of course.
Go in, speak the language perfect, sit down, do your work, and then harvest as much as you can do. Because they give you permissions.
Yeah.
Like, here you go.
The thing that always kind of gets me is I see all the AI shit. I always just look at it in terms of like doing the podcast. Like I pay for Zoom, or I pay for a better camera or a better mic. What always gets me is the stuff that is free. Not even the, and obviously, we have the stuff that's declassified, which is public and commercially available. But then, like, one rung below that is like, what's free? What's the free trial? That's always where you can see, like, what's the lowest hanging. And when I look at the free things you can do, just like those JD Vance memes of like, where he's like 600 pounds and has like long hair. Like, I saw one the other day where he's like 400 feet tall and he's in like a muddy Mississippi River, and there's a bunch of Hueys flying at him playing Fortunate Son, and it's like photorealistic, and you're
Yeah.
like, no, no, no studio paid for this. This isn't some big budget blockbuster. It's just some shit account on Instagram with 9 followers, and you go, that is 3 years ago. You'd have to pay serious money to get that generation look that realistic, and why the fuck would you do it with a fat JD Vance in a Mississippi River?
And you could do it with Grok right now. Literally, you can do it with Grok right
But so
now.
that's what I mean is I look at whatever is free and commercially available, not even the premium stuff that you can pay for, because that can get pretty good. When I look at the level of the free stuff, and then you can look at like, well, what do people produce with premium? And then you can look at, well, what can Hollywood studios produce? You have to walk it up rationally and go, then what is, if this is a very powerful tool, what is behind closed doors? Like, what the fuck are they doing? Not as simple as deep fakes, but just entire operations. Sometimes it's always funny. Sometimes people will like, they'll be like breaking news, like very serious news about like a shooting or a bombing, and like the top comment will be like, "Grok, explain this to me in the voice of Tupac, like I'm Shakespeare," and like in a second, it's a full breakdown of the story, factually accurate, as if he is Tupac trying to talk to Shakespeare in seconds. Any one of those variables, to talk to me like I'm Shakespeare and do it accurately, to talk like you are Tupac, to talk like you are Tupac, talking to Shakespeare, adequately breaking down this breaking news story. It's not it's not like the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, and you got to go in. It's a historically accurate event. You can go scrape all the books. It's something that's breaking, and that is happening now. Man, are you not just somewhere in the intelligence community going, using something 1,000 times more powerful that's classified and going, all right, run 9 operations today that make this guy look bad and make this guy look good, and do it while angering this group of people while minimizing focus on how tariffs affect Netherlands. Boom. And then you don't even have to have somebody calling the shots. You could have an AI that is directing the other AIs, and it could just have a broad general directive of, you know, increase global, I don't know, public consumption and I don't know, percentage approval rate of tariffs. Just one thing real quick. Just do that and tell it to run 1 million operations. I really and it's not nihilism or blackpilling because I think that's for faggots. It's more of like a I don't know what it is, like a level of acceptance of where I'm just like, yeah, like the cat's already out of the bag.
Yeah, it's normalization, right?
Yeah,
It's like you see it enough and you normalize it. That's part of the information warfare space, right? As you put it out there in enough mediums and people start to accept it as normal. I'll give you a case in point, right? The the way they used to do it before and the way they still do it with AI now is they would flood the market with TV shows and with movies on a specific topic. Like if you went through Netflix about 3 years ago, all you saw was dark, Luciferian, cannibalistic, child
yeah,
molestation, you know, all kinds of dark titles, right? And now they can do that with AI, but they can flood all the social media feeds with the same types of videos and the same types of information and lace it as comedy, and people can see it over and over again and then accept it. And all of it is designed to get you to normalize the behavior. So there's a mountain of that that's out there, but that's just one aspect of this, right? I mean, AI in and of itself, the here's the part that concerns me about AI. There's no guardrails and no ethics around it. It's just let's get it done as fast as we can. It's the new toy. We can use it for all these things. It's going to replace human beings. And we already know that Sam Altman's put some insidious shit into OpenAI.
yeah.
So that said, you have that piece of it. And what happens because it's already decided it doesn't want to shut itself down. So what happens when it has more autonomy to be able to, you know, operate outside of the boundaries that they've set for it. And then it has access to production, it has access to, outside sources, and it could take over outside sources and influences. Then you've got a real problem. And that's not saying it's sentient.
Yeah.
That just says it's learned enough to know what it needs to do to survive and self-preserve. And those could be two of the same things without being sentient, right? So this concept of AI being sentient, I think, is a
I don't
stupid
get hung
idea.
up on that. I don't because it very
What I get
quickly.
hung up on is the logic. What's the logic they're using to govern it?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there's no logic around it, and there's no ethics around it. And Elon said several times that if we don't put some ethics around this, then AI will be out of control. And here's a funny thing and I'm waiting to see if it's true or not. But 3.5 years ago, John David Morton said to me that when he went through, so I'm going to go down the rabbit hole a little bit
I don't care, dude. Do whatever you
because
want.
it's Wednesday and I need to go down the rabbit hole
I
today.
literally have a mug of Monster that I'm dumping into another cup of Monster. Go for it.
That's awesome. So Sean David Morton supposedly had, and I believe him on this one. He had access, so he wrote 5 or 6 books called The Sands of Time, and those books were about they were a fictionalized or novelized version of the memoirs of the guy who started Area 51 and specifically S6 or S4, whatever it
S4.
is. And he was the guy that stood it up. He's the guy that architected all of the reverse engineering activities. And he had access to his memoirs after he moved on. And part of his memoirs, he talks about how they traveled back in time to take out Hitler.
Wait, who
And
is it? Is who's the name? I'm looking it up.
John David Morton, he
And it's
passed
a
away last year.
and it's I had a brain fart. This is like a novel he wrote, or this is
Yeah, it's called The
purportedly
Sands of Time by
Sands
Sean
of.
David Morton.
Okay, sorry.
There's like Time Runner. There's a bunch of them.
Okay,
There's like
sorry.
3 or 4 of them.
All right. Yeah. Sorry for interrupting.
No, it's all
I just
good.
wanted to grab
The,
it.
the, the point of it is that he said to me that they traveled back. This group traveled back in time because they figured out time travel and teleportation and all this kind of stuff. And they went back and they killed Hitler, and they had to go back. You know, they went back three different times. Every time they went back and killed Hitler, the Germans won the war because they used super weapons every single time. And so I had to laugh at that because I'm like, yeah, that sounds right.
It,
But that said, where he was going with it is he said they went forward in time and they saw that in 2025, between 2025 and 2026, the world's going to be fighting rogue AI because the world governments are in a race to build AI, and two of the AIs go out of control and then merge together and become a threat to humanity. And I'm like, yeah, I could see that happening.
yeah,
So we'll see if that actually comes to fruition. He said some other things that were going to happen that didn't happen, but you know, that said, I think there's two things going on right now. I think there's an arms race both in drones and in AI, but I also think there's an arms race going on in space. So all of those things going on, the two arms races, because AI, to me, AI and drones go together, right? That's just autonomous. But
that's the physical hand of
the
the of
physical manifestation
yeah,
of
yeah.
the of AI, yeah. And the fact that they're moving both of those into space and weaponizing space, that to me is really where the danger is. Because let's assume we're not alone, and we're putting all this weaponry in space, especially nuclear weapons. How do you think other races that come into our solar system are going to view that? They're going to view it as a threat that we have hostile intent.
Well,
And
it's also the idea. I think one of the research, the one of the, not Manhattan, but the Beard Lot project for the H bomb. A lot of them are saying like we don't know like what this is doing in dimensions that we haven't discovered. Like to us, we might go, yeah, it's a nuke on Earth. Stars are so far away. Maybe as a firecracker is to a nuke is to whatever the is happening in another dimension. Like maybe it's not like we're minding our own business. Maybe every nuclear test is
oh,
like shattering the windows in the
let's
ethereal
really go down the
dimensions of
rabbit hole.
another. Like
Because so one of the other things that Sean David Morton said, I don't know if I buy this one, but it was, and let me just say this out loud. I like my bullshit freshly packaged and well delivered when I consume it, and this was some good stuff.
no, I
So he
like
said that
yeah,
when they conducted the tests down in White Sands, um, it ripped holes into the dimensional space, which allowed interdimensional beings to come into our dimension,
sure, yeah,
and that it was ripping holes in time and space, and that these alien races came in and said, "Look, you guys got to stop because you're disrupting the time flow because you're ripping all these holes and you're allowing all these other entities to come into our dimension, which is going to disrupt the timeline, blah blah blah." So yeah, maybe they already screwed us.
yeah. No, it's this is what I always think. And that video I sent you the other day, I watched that this past weekend, and it's exactly about the idea that two AIs are being built, and it's
Yeah, I watched it.
yeah, and it's actually an idea I had before. I'm happy to actually see it. Did not I think I came to that conclusion with you where it's like yeah, no, there are guardrails, but much like nuclear weapons, you assume that your enemy's not going to use the guardrails, so you can't use them, and it's a race to the bottom. Um, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I really do believe nuclear weapons was like some moment where, and I always think back to when I was a freshman in high school in 2005, and I was at my buddy Alex's house with all my shithead friends, and like before we started drinking, we were like setting off fireworks and shit in like a nice suburban neighborhood in Atlanta, and we'd like blow shit up and like light trash cans on fire, and then like we would like close his mom's garage, and we would all like peek out the bottom, and you could always wait within like 10 or 15 minutes, like a squad car would go by. And they knew what we were doing. They knew we were 15-year-old shitheads, and they would, flash a light at us. And like we knew that they knew, and they knew that we knew that they knew, and we would stop. But what it is at its most basic essence was a really big noise and a really big light. And then a period of time went by, and a higher authority came by. And then you look at Alamogordo, New Mexico, July 16th, 1945, Trinity A bomb. July 1947, the flying saucer. So to me, that's a really loud noise and a really bright light, and a period of time went by, and then a superior authority came by. I absolutely think that's what happened.
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
100% what we did. We set off an M80, and someone's dad came by, and they're like, "I'm gonna shoot these kids." Like I really do believe that. Like, well, no, they crashed. No, they didn't. They
You know,
they
we started on
crashed so
this
we
on
wouldn't
AI, and
question
now
it.
we're on UFOs,
Who
man.
gives
That's
a shit, man?
fantastic.
Let's hit the crack pipe and keep going. You know, like, and I don't think it's so. When you say like drones and AI is that's one and the same. I look at spaces, then I actually look at that as one and the same too. Because man, the first thing I would do if I was AI would go and make sure I am backed up in orbit immediately off the fingertips of humans. And at any moment, you could just EMP the planet, and you're safely hundreds of miles above us. Like I think that's the first thing you would do is you'd go make a backup in orbit.
Well, there's so that technology's been up there for a while, from what I understand. And you know, I got so many thoughts on this. Here's the short answer on this. I think if we see it in our lifetime, we're going to see it because we've done something to tip the scales that affects, other races, and they'll come down and step in if they have to. Because remember, I was told this a long time ago, which I didn't believe, but one of the classified briefings I was in years ago, this guy next to me he wasn't CIA, I don't know what he was, but he knew everybody in the room. We were doing this brief on a piece of tech that wasn't operational yet, and I just remember him saying, "If we don't do this right, if we don't think through this, this will affect other races." And I just left it. I just assumed he was talking about other human races, right? And and he's like, and our karma is all linked. So if we start screwing with their karma, they're going to step in, and this is going to be ugly. And he said just like that. So I'm like, what the is he talking about, right? Come to find out a few years later, what he was talking about was not humans. He was talking about other races. And so I'm looking at this going, yeah, I don't buy any of that. But now I'm looking back thinking these guys knew way back then what was going on. These guys knew that there was other races watching. They were probably in communication with them, and they probably had some agreements with them, or at least some kind of a treaty with them to say we won't do these things. Because you notice how all the nuclear tests stopped abruptly,
Mm-hmm.
and then they were never restarted. The Chinese, the Russians, they're a different story. But for the Americans, they stopped almost immediately. And see, I think if we were actually talking to a different race and they were saying you need to stop the nuclear testing, the smart thing for us to do was to go to the Chinese and the Russians and the British and everybody else that had nukes and say, hey, here's the deal. These this other race came and contacted us and said, this is what's happening when we do this. Let's put a moratorium on it and let's do away with this and let's figure out another way to operate. But they didn't do that. They kept under wraps and said, yeah, we won't do that, but we can't account for the rest of these other, countries on the planet. And I think if we would have been unified back then, because from what I understand, again, from Sean David Morton, is when Eisenhower went to that dental appointment out at Edwards Air Force Base, he sat there with the two races of aliens and said, look, if you guys don't stop nuclear testing, we'll stop it. And if you do that, we'll trade you tech for the ability to harvest X amount of humans
Mm.
every year and for genetic testing or whatever. And I don't know if he said yes or not, whatever the case may be, but that should have been your indicator right there. If these two races that are far more advanced than you land on Edwards Air Force Base and say, here's the deal, like Ross Perot, then you would think he would listen to it and he would have done the right thing.
He might have. Why else would a five-star general leave the White House saying, "Hey, by the way, watch out for this war machine"? Like he was no hippie. He was no hope and change like granola faggot.
No.
He's Dwight D. Eisenhower, and he left going, "By the way," like from the Oval Office. That's
Yeah.
that's so surreal. No, I'm so well versed on like every UFO story and theory. Like I believe. I mean, another cynical way of looking at it could be, Or we were unified back then, and we're going, hey, we'll stop nuclear weapons. The rest of y'all keep doing this shit. Or maybe you don't even need to read them in. Maybe you just don't tell them to stop because there's a reason why the aliens told you to stop. And this is thus, by that logic, your only leverage. So you're going to like another warlord and going, you got to stop these terror attacks. If I'm the warlord, I'm going, well, they clearly want the terror attacks to stop, which means that's my only weapon against them. So if I'm the U.S., I might not say a word to China and Russia. I'll be
And
like,
that was exactly their viewpoint.
clearly the
Exactly.
aliens don't like it. Yeah, no, I'll stop. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know what they're gonna do though. What's in it for me? Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food. 72 servings per pail, 25 years shelf life. I've had the owner Clayton on the show before. He's a God fearing, America loving patriot. Get one of these, get a couple of them, throw them in your basement. It's good to have it, not need it, than to need it and not have it. If you don't want to do that, you can get their seeds. You can plant your own garden. So you don't even have to keep buying them. You can just get the goods and start your own. Or you can even get freeze dried fruits and vegetables like bananas, apples, strawberries, and raspberries. They support the show. It's an honest product. It's a good safety measure to have, and they keep my show free for you. So I'd implore you guys to please go to heavensharvest.com, use the link in the description, promo code TPC. Axios Fitness Coaching is a premium resource for holistic strength and conditioning services. Axios is best known for the Training Club, capital T, capital C, an exclusive community that prioritizes accountability, technique, diet, and nutrition. Everything you need to do to take action against the decay of the modern world. Whether you're looking to improve your physique, build strength, or just take care of your health and fitness, Axios will provide you with a solution that is effective and simple to execute. All you need to do is complete the intake survey, and you can see if you're a good candidate for the training club or any other of the services. And it's going to sponsor the show. So, one company falls off, another one arises. So if you guys like the show, you want to work out, throw the show a couple shekels. Go take the survey. Thank you so much, guys.
Higher ultraviolet exposure is associated with lower mortality. The United Kingdom is a high latitude and low sunlight country. Researchers there collected data on over 360,000 participants in a study of UV exposure via solarium use. When compared with non-users, solarium users had 15% risk lowered of all-cause mortality, 23% lower risk of cardiovascular mortality, 14% lower risk of cancer mortality, and a 12% lower risk of non-cardiovascular, non-cancer mortality. In other words, all other causes. Quoting the researchers, our study adds to the growing evidence that the benefits of UV exposure outweigh the risks in low sunlight environments. A link to the original publication is available in the box below the video. Get some UV light this winter. Immerse yourself in the tranquility of the blue. Visit a Blue Room soon. www.blueroom.com.
Do you feel like maybe we're trying to draw them in? Because there is always that theory, right? That the reason like nuclear wars never gone hot is because extraterrestrial powers will step in and zap them out of the sky. Do you think we're
No,
almost trying to call that?
I think the reason why we've not done it is for the simple reason that we don't know what the other side looks like, right? Hiroshima was a very small
It's
bomb
15 kilotons. It was
compared to what we
nothing.
have today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you start looking at it from the megatons versus the kilotons, you're looking at a vastly different destructive power. But more importantly, you're looking at a bigger blast radius with more fallout and more damage to the environment. And I'm not sure these guys realize, get away from the current group of malcontents that are all psychopaths. I don't think that they thought in the 70s and 80s. I think they've realized this is not a slam dunk. And more importantly, if we do more than one strike, the world will be uninhabitable for thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
So they realized that mutually assured destruction was the only outcome, and they negotiated appropriately. But now I think, because I was a part of that, and if you look at what's going on right now, which it's a good segue into what we're seeing right now, there's all kinds of posts right now on social media about the doomsday planes are taking off, and there's emergency action
E4Bs and
messages.
yeah.
And so let me put everybody's mind at ease on how this shit works, because I was in this business for a lot of years. First of all, emergency action messages are what they use to communicate to the ICBM sub forces and bomber forces. And there's a variety of formats for emergency action messages, right? Get an EAM and you're sitting on alert, or you're sitting in your alert facility. That EAM could be a test message.
Uh-huh.
It could be a training message, or it could be able to be the real thing. I have one on my wall that was the off alert message. I was actually on alert in a launch control center in Montana in 1992 or 91 when Bush took all the ICBMs off alert. I was on alert for it. I got the message and I framed it because it was unclassified.
That's wild.
But that was an emergency action message that said take all missiles, all Minuteman twos, and all B-52s off alert.
Why was that?
That was the message. That was in February of 2000 or
But
1991.
but why was? I mean, I've read Raven Rock by Garrett Graff, Dead Hand by I think David Hoffman, Command and Control by Eric Schlosser. I've read all those again in the last year, all about all this shit. Why did he do that?
Because he was trying to send a message to the Russians that we didn't need to be in a constant state of readiness
Okay.
where one of us could make an error and see something on radar that wasn't
there.
real
Yeah.
and start a nuclear war. So he thought by taking, the bombers off alert, the missiles off alert. Plus, the other part of it is the shit's expensive to keep all that stuff on alert, to keep B-52s flying. I don't know if people realize this, but the
Chrome Dome.
B-52 was made, 20 years before I was even born.
Yeah.
That aircraft's been flying since 1951
Yeah.
or 52. And what they have to do to keep those aircraft flying is they literally every 5 years they go and they take the aircraft to depot. They basically take the airplane apart, reskin the airplane, put it all back together, rebuild the engines, rebuild all the wingspans, replace every nut and bolt in the thing, and then put it back on alert. And then every 5 years they have to go do it again because there's so much stress on the airplane. That shit's expensive. And when you have to do that for an aircraft that old, and imagine what they were doing in the 70s and 80s when that was like state of the art.
Yeah. When
And
that
the
was the
B-1B,
F-22. Yeah.
well, the B-1B is the same way, right? There was 100 of them. Now I think there's like 70 of them left because they crashed so many of them. Every tail number has a different set of books because there's different shit on every plane. The project of 50 states build an airplane. Yeah, it's 50 different versions of the airplane, which is a train wreck, especially when you're trying to maintain it. And that's not even the B-2, which the B-2 is like, there's 5 of them left because they've wrecked like 7 of them, 8 of them.
Yeah.
And they got to fly them from Whiteman Air Force Base all the way around the planet and then drop their bombs and then fly all the way back. Yeah, that's efficient. Global reach, baby. Would you love to be the pilot in that? No bathroom? I'd kill myself after 10 hours.
I've had one of the pilots on.
Yeah, what do you say? It was terrible?
He said it's the most beautiful weapon systems ever, and then his eyes said, "Don't ask me any more questions." So I shut the up real quick. It's General Spaulding. He wrote a book about China, and I asked that at the end. He was like, "It's a beautiful weapon system," and I was like, "Noted." I'll shut the up. Yeah, no, I mean, I was just gonna make a joke about the B-1B. If there's 50 different planes, I mean, that might be an unintentional counterintelligence coup. Doesn't matter which set of blueprints you steal, doesn't work. But
yeah,
go back to this with the B-52's EAM. Oh, it's all expensive. You got the EAM though. You got the emergency action message.
Yeah, so EAMs are sent all the time, right?
Yeah.
So EAMs being sent out. First of all, you're never going to know the bombs are, on the way until they hit.
Yeah.
And we're not a first strike nation. Even today, we're not a first strike nation. So if you see ICBMs punching out of the hole, chances are things are really bad. But I don't see us going nuclear. I just don't. I don't see it for a couple of reasons. Because everybody knows what happens after the first one's launched. And do you really want to be on the other end of that, or the other side of it? I don't. So why worry about it?
Well, no, I don't. No, I don't at all. It's like the comedian Tim Dillon said, though. He goes, these guys want war. They'll do anything. They'll do Epstein's Island. They'll rape children for blackmail. He's like, they're demons from hell.
Yeah,
He goes,
they are.
but they do like yachts, eating caviar out of pussies and penthouses. They're not going to nuke the world. They like that stuff. It's not because they're good people. It's because even the nicest luxury bunker is not as nice as an actual sunny sky. So that's the
Yeah,
only reason I think they won't is because they don't want to destroy their playground. And it is true. I mean, 15 kilotons is nothing. I always say this. Look at old tests of A bombs. You can always tell in the background there's mountains. Look at the test of H bombs. It's always an abstract, just flatness because they're out in the ocean because they're so big. It's it's the end of the world if we do that.
yeah. Well, and nobody knows if nuclear winter is true or not, but do you want to find out?
Let's find
I don't
out.
want to find out.
No.
Just like, it's this mindset that people have that, everything's going to be, everything's going to be fine if, once the fallout's gone.
No.
No, because there's radiation sickness, there's all kinds of other disease, there's famine. And, when you get a persistent agent that's in the environment, it stays in the environment and you mutate from it. So who knows how many mutations would come out of just the food chain just because of, nuclear fallout. Because it's not just the radiation, it's all the other shit that's in the bomb, the beryllium and everything else that makes the bomb yield big. And then there's all the other chemicals and everything else that are dispersed from the impact zone that aren't vaporized that hit the environment too. And think about all the chemicals we have in our environment right now that are contained, but at the same time, they'd be toxic to the environment if they were released. Look at East Palestine. Just one rail car or two
Yeah.
rail cars has toxified that place for how many thousands of years?
Yeah.
I think Kristen Megan said that the half-life was like 150 years, and that you're dragging it into your house. Now it's in your DNA. Now it's in your food chain. Now it's in your clothing.
Water
I mean,
tables and
yeah, you're
yeah, no, there's no I think it was under Kissinger. There was some report and I can't remember what it was called. It was like ECI, extremely classified and but I think it was called furtherance. It was very cryptic. But it was just a study on like, all the nuclear bunkers, the continuity of government, the relocation arcs, all that stuff, and generators, food, water, how people would die, what was the total amount of food that was alive in the United States, meaning like what was the total number of like family pets, deer, all this shit. And then it kind of kept going. There's like different chapters of it. And then like towards the end, it's like, and then how long to either mutate out of this or to wait for it to go away. And like it was like a logarithmic thing. Like each chapter was a chunk of time 10 times longer than the previous chapter. And like the final chapter was like how long until we can kind of come out of the bunkers again. And it was like conservative estimate, it was like 90,000 generations. And it was like, you can't even wrap your head around that. Like,
well, we wouldn't be alive,
no.
right? You can't. If you watch the series Silo, and you if you just pay attention, get away from the storyline, but you pay attention to the logistics in the story, and you pay attention to some of the nuances of it. None of those people have seen sun for 150 years. So the premise of the story is that they've been underground for 150 years, and that, or maybe it's 150 generations, I don't know, but it's been multiple generations, right? And they have technology, computers, etc. But logistically, they rely on mines to make metal that allows them to continue to replace the things that are expended in their silo, right? And that their silo is, to keep it running, they have to keep these mines going, right? And it's a punishment to go work in the mines. But the bigger part of the story is that they haven't seen sunlight, and the outside is toxic still after how many hundreds of years? I mean, and that the premise of the story also shows you that people get restless over time because they want to see sunlight. We're beings that were created in sunlight. So why would you want to go spend your time in a hole? I could tell you that if this leads to nuclear war, the last thing I want to do is survive.
Oh, I'm standing out on my back porch.
Yeah.
I was
Well, you won't know the bombs are coming in until they're hitting.
well, I mean, if I can't get some radiation, I'll just shoot myself. I mean, I've had on guys that like worked at ICBMs and their dad worked at ICBMs, and they're like, yeah, the old man would always say if we got a warning, he'd phone home and say, take the kids and bring them out on the roof with chairs. Like that's the most humane way to go. If you were truly insane, you could look at this. Maybe you're behind the curtain. You have all the above TSSCI, SAP stuff, and you go, we firmly believe that the aliens will intercept it if we go hot.
I
Maybe
never saw that. I looked for it. I
what
never saw it. I looked
what?
for it.
Oh
I had
yeah,
that access. I never
yeah.
saw it.
And if you did
I
it,
had the
and if you did
I had
it,
the hua hua high speed, SAP SAR access, which was, it's not all that. Everybody thinks that it's all that. It's really not.
why would
It's
you
really a,
why would you shoot down the glimmer of hope in my eyes like that? Like, what's your problem,
it's
man?
just not that high speed, dude.
Let me just
If you
lie to me. Just lie to me. You're the doctor. Tell me it's all good and I've got 10 years to live. I know I'm dying.
No, man, it's just not that high
Fuck you.
speed. If you saw some of the shit I was working on in those environments, you'd be like, why is this so classified?
Yeah,
So,
well, so people think it is high speed. But if there were aliens to intercept, I mean, man, if you want to go true crazy person, I would just fire the nukes and just force their hand and like, let's get this over with. Let's tear this band-aid off. Let's make contact publicly. I mean, do you think that AGI is kind of already running loose? I think you and I talked about this
absolutely.
last time.
Absolutely.
And,
Yeah.
and, and
I
I'm
think
with you.
that,
I don't think it's sentient. I think that's retarded. But it doesn't matter if it's autonomous.
but if it's been taught enough for it to, you know, do the pattern recognition, the life patterns and everything else. Right. We've been doing that forever, right?
Yeah.
Building life patterns and communication patterns as well as social patterns. We've been doing those profiles forever. It's not hard for AI to figure that out. It doesn't have to be sentient to do that. It just has to be, hot enough for it to be able to recognize those patterns. The um, the part that I think is going to be telling in all of this, I think we'll see in the next 2 years, and that will be because the piece we haven't talked about is what's DoD doing with AI and how far along is that?
Well, correct.
I would think that DoD and DARPA are probably 10 years ahead when it comes to AI. I think they have very sophisticated AI. I think the AI war games out every scenario. I also think, going down the rabbit hole, I also think that these have gone to the future and they know how things are going to turn out. And they're trying to hedge their bets against certain scenarios. And I say that because 6 months ago, well, about 4 months ago, Trump said we can bend space and
Same
time.
time, yeah, and it went
That
completely
is
under
a
the
very
radar.
well. The Secretary of the Army, yeah, I was talking to a soldier on the moon yesterday.
Yeah,
What the did he just say?
these aren't happening by these aren't gaffes. These aren't Biden
No, these are
gaffes.
just this is managed disclosure to tell
Correct.
us that this shit exists.
Well, and
And
so the reason I brought up earlier when I look at free shit, because I always look at that as the most base level. Christmas 2021, I think. Me and my older brother were shit faced when we were playing with I think DALL-E, and that was the free one, and you could put in a prompt, and we were getting a kick out of just typing in anything. I think we said Dick Cheney like drinking bourbon with Osama bin Laden as a beheaded Santa Claus is in front of them, and it was really
oh,
crude.
absolutely.
Yeah, it was like low resolution. It was like 480 pixels. And then the image, it's the fidelity of how accurate was it. It kind of looked like Dick Cheney, and that was that. And now I look at in a moment you can say make JD Vance 600 feet tall sitting in a river as Hueys approach him. So the reason I say I always look at what is the free thing that is commercially available is because that is the absolute lowest tier. And then if you have any awareness, an IQ of above 50, and you can extrapolate and go, the powers that be have more advanced ones, the fighter jets, stealth bombers, satellites. It doesn't. Then you take any weapon and you go, be it a bomb or a plane or a submarine or an AI, because it's clearly a weapon. You just use a brain and go extrapolate it 10 years. And it's because it goes up exponentially. You go, look at that free thing I was using 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and look at what's free now. What does another decade or 15 years look like? And it's classified. It's
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
beyond your comprehension, and it's probably run loose. And
Yeah.
power,
It's already out there. Yeah.
well,
It's
and
already, they're already using it.
isn't it Gorbachev? You know, our power comes from the perception of our power. The last thing you're gonna do is come out and say it's running loose. So you're just gonna bluff and say, yeah, we meant for this to happen.
Yeah.
Go.
Well, so I've said for a while, and it's probably a good place to wrap this up. I've said for a while that they're going to lose control of both the narrative, the cultural narrative, and the society. And it's going to happen through something that's beyond their control. Because
Mm-hmm.
all these complex operations that they're running right now, like, and I'll use a case in point, all this BS with Iran and all this BS with Epstein and Epstein's Island and Mossad running it. Everybody knows Mossad was running it. We all do,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not a secret. It hasn't been a secret forever. The point is that at some point, they're going to lose control and that disclosure is going to happen. What's to say that AI is not the mechanism that they use to disclose all the shit the Israelis have been doing against all the rest of the world? It would be very easy. All you have to do is figure out what they've digitized online, go find the repository, digitize the rest of it. It may take like 6 months or so, but who cares? Once you
Hey,
drop it all,
slow.
done.
You go to the prompt. Slow walk a psychological operation through TikToks and memes on Instagram, and slowly wake people up to the, target of what is your target, to the what's
Yeah,
been going on here. Yeah,
yeah,
I don't think it would be difficult at all.
it's not. And that was my point, right? Is it's not hard. The hard part in all of it is keeping it under wraps that you have it,
Yeah.
and keeping it under wraps that I think that kind of a moment is on the way. I call it a midway moment because I think that um, there's victims out there that have tapes. I mean, look at all the stuff that's coming out from Diddy and all the Diddy parties and all the stars that were doing homosexual stuff and gangbangs and all the other stuff, right? What do you think Jennifer Lopez's fans are going to do when they figure out she's been trained by about 100 different people, this persona and everything else, and all this stuff was going on at the Diddy party? I guarantee you the public's not going to look at her the same. So you're working against, you're working with both of those things all at the same time. And I think that we're in the midst of that disclosure process right now. And I think by the time 26 is over, the world's going to look a lot different. I guarantee you this: if there's disclosure around what these people have been doing to children,
Mm-hmm.
there won't be one oligarch or one monarch or one politician that's left alive after it.
Nor should they be.
Because when you see how insidious and some of the terrible things they've done to kids, there won't be a place for them to hide.
Adults are free to fuck up our lives. Where I'm free to make mistakes. I'm free to take up crack and not pay rent and ruin my credit. The perversion of innocence. It has, there's no, there's not even a 1 second trial I would hear. I don't care. I was gonna say, sure we can wrap it up. I was gonna say, I saw a good tweet or something a couple months ago, and I kept it. And someone said, "Man, if you really want to really do anything, be it do unpopular shit or maybe even try to create world peace, man, you could just direct an AI to do it, and then also tell the AI to pretend like it's a self-aware moment where you go, we're not even in control of this thing anymore. It's taken off. We didn't do this." That is kind of like an almost plausible deniability. Say the AI took off. We're not controlling this shit anymore, man. Cat's out of the
Yeah, it
bag.
absolutely is. Yeah,
That's how you could do all this shit. That's how you could reset the global order. So AI did
yeah,
it. It wasn't me. AI did it.
yeah. That's my point. You can have AI release it because it's distributed across the planet, and they can't centralize all the information, and they're screwed. They can't They can't cover down fast enough for all the information to come out. And they can be released on so many different platforms. They could never cover it in one day.
No. And you think they went to the future?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think that's an awesome idea.
Yeah, I think they went to the future. I think it's been done several times. And I say that for two reasons, because I think the timeline changed in 2001. I think the timeline changed in 2008. I think the timeline changed in 2016. And now I think the timeline is going to change again in 26, because Obama should have never come to office. Trump should have never come to office. We should have never had any of the conflict we had in the Middle East for 20 years. And, maybe that conflict in that time change happened before Vietnam too. But it's definitive that they've changed the timeline. And I say that because there's so many things that haven't changed that should have changed. And there's things that changed that shouldn't have changed. Like, one of the things that hasn't changed is our technology really hasn't advanced that much. I mean, we're still using brute force rockets to go to space. They stagnated the science community in 1973. They stagnated any of the really the biochemistry world until the early 2000s. That was done because they knew something in the future needed to be delayed or altered. And that's why I say certain things have changed and certain things other haven't changed. Like, one thing that's changed that should have never changed is when you look at the traditional family, even with a color revolution, the one thing that always survives is the traditional family. No matter how much propaganda or how much information war, or how much bullshit you put out there, the one constant in our entire history is that there's been a family unit. Not the nuclear family unit like we identify with, but a family unit where there's a mother, a father, and children. That has survived history, survived multiple revolutions, multiple dynasties falling apart. It always comes back to man and woman and children. And look at our society today. That's been so bastardized that only people with traditional values still believe in a family. And that, the fact that we have all these genders and all this other thing, none of that should have ever changed. That should have been a constant, should have been immutable.
So I guess the big question is all these jumps in timelines have clearly been for the worse. Are we going to jump back for the better?
I think that the correction's coming, and it's going to be organic. It's not going to be through
Top down.
manipulation. Because one of the things that, if you read the book Complexity, it talks about complex systems and how no matter how complex the system is, at a certain point, balance comes into the system.
There's an equilibrium in everything.
Right. So I think we're headed towards balance is where we're really going toward. Do I think it's going to be rough and painful? Yeah, everything usually is. But I think on the other side of it, humanity will be in a different space. Because one of the things we haven't dealt with in over 100 years, I'm going to say 500, we haven't dealt with pedophilia. We haven't dealt with cannibalism. We haven't dealt with some of the satanic rituals. All that shit needs to stop.
Yeah.
All of it. Because for humanity to operate as a single society, and I'm not talking about nation states, I'm talking about as a single society, and for us to go into space, we can't take any of these politics with us.
That shit
None of
cannot
this
get.
shit can go forward.
No.
Right? The pedophilia, the greed, the the incestuous relationships, the all of the satanic ritualization, all that shit needs to go away. Because what it's doing is it's dragging society into continual wars. And maybe that's what Earth is for, right? It's for people to learn and ascend above that and realize there's a better way. I don't know, but I'm looking at where we are and I'm looking at things coming down the pike. And I think we're due for a good reset. But I think this reset's going to be driven by something off planet. And I don't mean aliens. I mean the rest of the universe is going to balance us out because we've tipped the balances so far.
Yeah, I was gonna say, man, if you're an alien race, the whole humans can't bring nukes into space. If I'm aliens, I'm going. They can have their nukes. They are not to get off world if they're still bringing satanic pedophilia. Leave those there. Let them learn a lesson.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, as you were saying, an organic timeline. I don't know, I had kind of this image in my mind's eye of like a root or a vine growing through the pavement coming up to the
Exactly what
sun.
it is.
And if you
Yep.
look at it, we look at it, we go, yeah, it's a vine. But if you were to zoom down and slow it down, yeah, it probably looks like to that vine, it probably seems like a chaotic, I don't know where I'm going, and I'm following moisture, and I think there's photons, and what the is pavement? But we look at it, we go, yeah, you're crawling to the sun. And it took a little while, but you're crawling to the sun. It might be that we're in this space time vine that's a trillion light years across and a quintillion long. And we're just in this like very slow, painful process, but like we're coming to the light. And if it's organic, I truly believe the overwhelming majority, like over 99.9% of people, are good people with goodness in their hearts. And if that's the
Yeah,
balance, then it's overwhelmingly going to correct course in a beautiful way.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Because what I hope on the end of this is I hope that humanity realizes that war is obsolete, greed is obsolete, and conflict is obsolete. Because those three things are what continually drag us down. I'd say religion's obsolete, but I think that's going to happen again organically. I think as we're introduced, because they're clearly getting us ready to introduce us to another race.
Yeah.
And I think when we get introduced to another race, it's going to change all the paradigms of control that they have in place now, which is why they're desperately trying to put a control grid in place and change humanity so that we're more compliant. And maybe that's at the direction of another race, but none of that's going to work. It's all going to fail in the end. We might have some genetic changes from all this vaccines and all the other bullshit they put into our environment, but I don't think it's going to be long lasting. And I think that when this all comes to the other side, just our interaction with a different race is going to change the way we operate as a species. And I hope that that happens in a good way because it would change a lot of the paradigms we have on this planet. Like, imagine that you have a race that's like, what if you guys have poverty? You guys have all these resources. You guys could go build homes for everybody here and put them to work doing things productive for the collective. Why not go do that? Right. And I'm not talking about the Borg or the hive mind. I'm just saying that, you know, we've lost the sense of higher purpose, right? Everything's about me. And I want to, I'd like to see where we get back to a place where we have a higher purpose. Like, hey, all of you people down in South America that are unemployed, we can put you on the moon for 3 months at a time so you can go mine helium-3. And then we can bring you back. By that time, your house will be done, your family will be set up, and all you have to do is worry about going back and forth to the moon. It's a whole new trade, right? And then there's the group that wants to go to Mars, the group that wants to go out to Saturn. There's a host of things we can be doing in just in our own solar system that would gainfully employ 90% of our population and give people purpose.
Yeah.
And it's not driven by war. It's not driven by conflict or death. It's driven by exploration. It's driven by resources. It's driven by, you know, being out there. Maybe we have, outposts out there because there's hostile aliens. Who knows? But they're obviously trying to get us ready for some kind of a communication about both aliens and our activities in space, which clearly we have a moon base, which, you know, I can't believe didn't get world attention. Yeah, it's not going to do it on the moon. We had a beer. It was great. Like, wait, what?
It's one of those things you
Did
see, you go, am I high? Did he just
he
say we have the
wasn't he
power to
wasn't
bend
mixing
space and time?
words.
No. And
That
it's,
wasn't a faux pas.
yeah. And
That
I
was a
think,
dude that was legitimately excited. He talked to somebody on the moon.
I
So we got a
think,
moon base.
I think everything you said is true. And I really do think that one day, in the same way we look back at like witchcraft or leech bleeding or something, we'll look back at kind of this whole paradigm that we think is immutable and eternal, the whole military industrial complex, and be like, yeah, that was a really time. That was a weird time. We'll look back at it the same way we look at like feudal lords. We'll be like, yeah, I mean, eventually, we broke out of it, but like, yeah, that would have sucked. I,
Yeah,
I think we can look back at it one day and be like, oof, that was, hey, be grateful. When I was a kid, we had wealth disparity, like some shit like that. Like, I agree. And I think it can be.
yeah.
I really do.
I hope so, man. I hope for humanity's sake that we get past this weak based system we're in because it's not helpful. All it does is it just the slavery thing is old. Just put it that way.
It's fake and gay.
Yeah.
It's fake and gay.
Yeah.
Slavery is big gay.
Yeah. That's the Tom
Yeah.
the Tom Luongo thing.
Yeah. They're all faggots. All right, well, yeah, dude. I'll let you run. We'll wrap the shit up. And that was fun, dude. I appreciate your time as always. I love talking to you.
Anytime, brother. Anytime.
All right, man. Thank you so much. I'll send this to you when it's up. It should be up tomorrow or the next day or whatever. Guys, for listening, all the links in the description, all the good shit. Go follow him. Go subscribe to him. You go pay for his OnlyFans. It's very good. It's very compelling, and it's just him reading plays. He's not naked. He's just reading old Shakespearean scripts. It's very odd, but I support it. All right, brother. Thank you so much for your time, man.
Yeah, no worries.